The message light blinked red on Marcus Reed's control panel as his cargo ship drifted through the empty space between star systems. He had been hauling metal ore from the mining colonies for 3 weeks straight, and his body ached from the long journey. The red light meant priority transmission, and those usually brought bad news. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes and pressed the receive button. Blake Torres appeared on the small screen, but something was wrong with the image. Static filled half the display, and Blake's face looked pale and strained. His uniform was torn, and there was blood on his forehead. Behind him, Marcus could see sparks flying from damaged equipment and hear the sound of alarms blaring. "Marcus, if you get this message, then I'm probably dead," Blake said, and his voice cracked with emotion. "The mining platform is falling apart, and we can't stop the reactor from overheating. I've got maybe 10 minutes before this whole place goes up like a supernova." Marcus felt his heart sink into his stomach. Blake Torres had been his closest friend for 15 years. They had served together in the Earth Defense Force before Marcus became a cargo hauler, and Blake took command of the deep space mining operations on Kepler 442b. Blake had saved Marcus's life more times than he could count during their military service. "Listen carefully, because I don't have much time," Blake continued as more sparks flew behind him. "I need you to go to Haven Station in the Arcturus system. Find a woman named Rita who runs the supply depot there. Tell her Blake sent you, and that you're here to collect what I left for you. She'll know what I mean." The transmission flickered, and Blake's image became even more distorted. "Marcus, this is important. What I'm leaving you will change everything. I know it sounds crazy, but trust me on this. You're the only person I can count on to do the right thing. Promise me you'll go to Haven Station." Marcus leaned forward and spoke to the screen, even though he knew Blake couldn't hear him. "I promise, buddy. Whatever it is, I'll take care of it." Blake seemed to hear him somehow, because he smiled through the pain. "I know you will. You're the most stubborn human I ever met, and that's saying something. Take care of yourself, Marcus, and remember what I always told you about doing what's right even when it's hard." The transmission cut off, and the screen went black. Marcus stared at the empty display for several minutes, trying to process what he had just witnessed. His best friend was dead, and there was nothing he could do about it. The mining platform was too far away, and even at maximum speed, he couldn't reach it in time to help. Marcus changed course of the Arcturus system and spent the next 5 days traveling through hyperspace. Haven Station was a small trading post on the edge of civilized space, where smugglers, merchants, and other questionable people conducted business away from government oversight. The station looked like someone had welded together a dozen different ship hulls and called it architecture. He docked his cargo ship and made his way through the crowded corridors filled with aliens from dozens of different species. The air smelled like recycled oxygen mixed with cooking spices and engine fuel. Vendors sold everything from exotic foods to illegal weapons, while customers haggled in languages Marcus didn't recognize. The supply depot was located in the lower section of the station, where the lighting was dim and the walls were covered with rust stains. Rita turned out to be a short, heavy woman with gray hair and suspicious eyes. She looked Marcus up and down when he approached her counter. "You must be Marcus Reed," she said before he could introduce himself. "Blake described you perfectly. Said you'd have that stubborn look in your eyes, like someone who won't back down from a fight." "Blake sent me," Marcus replied. "He said you have something for me." Rita nodded and gestured for him to follow her into a back room filled with storage containers and spare parts. She stopped in front of a large metal crate and turned to face him with a serious expression. "Before I show you what's in here, I need to explain something," Rita said. "Blake won your freedom in a poker game about 3 years ago. Cost him nearly everything he had saved up, but he said it was worth it to get you away from those slavers." Marcus felt confused. "I think there's been some mistake. Blake never bought my freedom from anyone. We served together in the military." Rita shook her head. "Not your freedom." Her freedom. She opened the metal crate, and Marcus's jaw dropped. Inside was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, but she definitely wasn't human. Her skin was pale blue like morning sky, and her hair was silver white and seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Strange markings covered her arms and face that glowed softly with their own inner light. She was sleeping peacefully, curled up on soft blankets. "This is Lyra," Rita explained quietly. "She's from a species called the Valdry. Blake won her from some nasty slavers who were planning to sell her to the highest bidder. According to Vaudry customs, when Blake freed her, she became his bonded mate. The woman's eyes opened, and Marcus found himself staring into the most incredible purple eyes he had ever seen. She sat up gracefully and looked between Marcus and Rita with obvious confusion. "Where is Blake?" she asked, and her voice had a musical quality that made Marcus's heart skip a beat. "I felt him die 3 days ago through our bond, but I don't understand why I'm still alive." Rita placed a gentle hand on the woman's shoulder. "Blake is gone, Lyra, but before he died, he transferred your bond to Marcus here. According to papers, he left you now belong to him." Marcus felt sick to his stomach. "Wait, just hold on here. Nobody belongs to anybody. This isn't the Dark Ages." Lyra looked at him with those amazing purple eyes, and Marcus could see intelligence and sadness there. "You don't understand human customs among my people. When a Vaudry female loses a protector, she becomes fair game for slavers or worse. If I return to my home world without a bonded mate, my own family will execute me for bringing shame upon them." "That's barbaric," Marcus said angrily. "No civilization should treat people like property." "Many things in this galaxy are barbaric by human standards," Lyra replied sadly, "but they are still reality. Blake understood this, which is why he made arrangements for my protection before he died." Marcus ran his hands through his hair, trying to make sense of the situation. His best friend had died and left him responsible for this beautiful alien woman who claimed she would be killed if he didn't help her. Everything about it seemed wrong, but he couldn't just abandon her to face slavery or death. "Look, I don't know anything about Vaudry customs or bonding or any of this," Marcus said, "but I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. You can stay on my ship until we figure out a better solution." Lyra's markings brightened and shifted to a warm golden color. "You would do this for a stranger. Blake was my friend, and if he thought you were worth protecting, then that's good enough for me," Marcus replied. "Besides, no human worth a name would leave someone helpless to face slavery." Rita smiled and handed Marcus a datapad. Blake left instructions about Vaudry culture and some legal documents that should keep the authorities from asking too many questions. He also left this. She gave Marcus a small device that looked like a communicator. "It's a translation matrix that will help you and Lyra understand each other better. Vaudry don't speak standard as well as they pretend to." Marcus helped Lyra gather her few possessions and led her through the station toward his ship. She stayed close to his side, and he noticed how other aliens stared at her with obvious hunger in their eyes. Some of them looked like the type who would buy and sell people without losing any sleep over it. His cargo ship wasn't much to look at, but it was home. The living quarters were small but clean, and Marcus showed Lyra to the spare cabin that he used for storage. She looked around the tiny space with wonder, as if she had never seen anything so luxurious. "This is mine," she asked, touching the simple bed and desk. "For as long as you want it," Marcus confirmed. "The door locks from the inside, so you'll have privacy. There's food in the galley, and you can use the shower whenever you need to." Lyra's markings shifted to that golden color again, and Marcus realized it probably meant she was happy or grateful. "Blake told me humans were different from other species, but I didn't understand what he meant until now." Marcus felt uncomfortable with her gratitude. He was just doing what any decent person would do in the same situation. "Get some rest. We'll talk more once we're away from the station." As Marcus prepared his ship for departure, he couldn't help but wonder what he had gotten himself into. Blake had always been the responsible one who thought everything through carefully. If he had made arrangements for this woman's protection, then there had to be a good reason for it. The cargo ship pulled away from Haven Station and headed for open space. Marcus set course for the Outer Rim territories, where they could lay low while he figured out what to do next. In the spare cabin, Lyra was probably trying to sleep in a real bed for the first time in years. Marcus looked at Blake's final message one more time before deleting it. His friend had been right about one thing. This was definitely going to change everything. Marcus woke up to the smell of something burning in his ship's galley. He jumped out of bed and rushed toward the source of the smoke, expecting to find a fire or some kind of equipment malfunction. Instead, he found Lyra standing over the food preparation unit with a confused expression on her face. Black smoke was pouring from what looked like the remains of his emergency rations. I apologize, Lyra said quickly when she saw him. I was trying to prepare morning sustenance, but your food preparation methods are unfamiliar to me. Marcus waved his hand to clear the smoke and check the damage. She had somehow managed to turn his protein bars into charcoal while trying to cook them. It's okay, he said, trying not to laugh. Those things taste like cardboard anyway. Let me show you how the food processor works. He demonstrated the simple controls and explained how to select different meal options from the ship's limited menu. Lyra watched intently as if she was memorizing every detail. Her markings had shifted to a pale blue color that Marcus was starting to associate with curiosity or concentration. Your people eat prepared foods rather than hunting fresh prey, Lyra observed. This explains why humans appear physically weaker than most species. We're not weaker, Marcus replied, feeling slightly defensive. We're just different. Humans figured out that working together and using tools was more efficient than trying to outmuscle everything. Lyra tilted her head in that way that reminded him she wasn't human despite her mostly humanoid appearance. Blake said similar things, but I didn't understand. He claimed humans were dangerous not because of physical strength, but because of mental flexibility. They sat down to eat breakfast together, and Marcus found himself studying her more carefully in the morning light. Her silver hair seemed to move on its own even when there was no air current in the ship. The glowing markings on her skin formed intricate patterns that shifted and changed like living tattoos. She was definitely beautiful, but in an alien way that reminded him she came from a completely different world. Tell me about Vaudry culture, Marcus said. If I'm supposed to be your protector, I should probably understand what that means. Lyra's markings brightened to that golden color again. You truly wish to learn about my people. Blake thought it was important enough to set this whole thing up, Marcus replied. The least I can do is try to understand. Lyra spent the next hour explaining Vaudry society, and Marcus found it more complex than he had initially thought. The Vaudry homeworld was filled with massive predators that could easily kill even their strongest warriors. Females developed powerful psychic abilities to defend themselves, but they needed physical protectors to survive in the wilderness. The bonding system wasn't slavery, but a form of marriage where both parties had specific roles and responsibilities. Males proved their worthiness through combat trials and demonstrations of strength, Lyra explained. Females choose their bond mates based on who can provide the best protection and produce the strongest offspring. What about love, Marcus asked. Do Vaudry marry for emotional reasons or just survival? Lyra looked puzzled by the question. What is love? Marcus stared at her for a moment, thinking she was joking. You don't know what love is. Blake used this word sometimes, but I never understood its meaning, Lyra said. Is it a human concept? Marcus tried to explain romantic love, emotional attachment, and the idea of choosing a life partner based on feelings rather than practical considerations. Lyra listened with fascination, as if he was describing some alien technology she had never encountered. Humans bond based on emotional compatibility rather than survival needs, she said slowly. This seems inefficient for species continuation. Maybe, Marcus admitted, but it makes us happy. Happy? Lyra repeated the word like she was tasting it. Another concept I don't fully understand. Vaudry experienced satisfaction when duties are fulfilled, but this happiness you describe sounds different. Marcus realized he was dealing with a species that had evolved completely different emotional responses than humans. The Vaudry had developed a rigid social structure focused entirely on survival and reproduction. Concepts like happiness, love, and personal choice were foreign to them. Their conversation was interrupted when the ship's proximity alarms started blaring. Marcus rushed to the control panel and saw 3 vessels approaching fast on the scanner. They were broadcasting hegemony identification codes, which meant official government business. We're being hailed, Marcus told Lyra as he accepted the incoming transmission. A reptilian alien appeared on the screen, wearing the dark uniform of a hegemony customs inspector. His scales were dark green and his eyes were cold and predatory. This is Inspector Voss of the Hegemony Trade Authority. Prepare to be boarded for routine inspection. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. The Hegemony controlled most of the galactic trade routes, and they had authority to search any vessel they suspected of illegal activity. What's the nature of this inspection? We have reports of unauthorized alien trafficking in this sector, Voss replied. All ships carrying non-registered sentients must submit to documentation review. The transmission cut off and Marcus turned to find Lyra, standing behind him with fear in her purple eyes. Her markings had shifted to a dark red color that probably meant danger or panic. "They're looking for me," she said quietly. "If they find me without proper bonding documentation, they'll confiscate me as illegal property." "Do you have any documentation?" Marcus asked. Blake had papers, but they were destroyed when the mining platform exploded, Lyra replied. "Without them, I have no legal status in hegemony space." Marcus felt anger building in his chest. The idea that Lyra could be treated like illegal cargo because she didn't have the right paperwork was infuriating. "They can't just take you. You're a person, not property. The hegemony doesn't recognize individual rights for non-member species," Lyra explained. "Valdry are considered primitive because we don't have advanced technology. They classify us as potential slaves or exotic pets." The docking tube extended from one of the hegemony vessels and connected to Marcus's ship with metallic clang. Heavy footsteps echoed through the airlock as the inspection team boarded. Marcus told Lyra to stay in her cabin and try to remain hidden. Inspector Voss entered the main cabin followed by 2 armed guards. He was even more intimidating in person with sharp teeth and claws that looked like they could tear through metal. His cold eyes scanned the ship's interior, looking for anything suspicious. "Cargo manifest," Voss demanded, extending a clawed hand. Marcus provided the standard documentation for his metal or shipment. Voss examined the papers carefully while his guards searched the cargo hold. Everything seemed routine until one of the guards returned carrying Lyra's few possessions. "Found these in the spare cabin," the guard reported. "Definitely not human clothing." Voss examined the alien garments, and his reptilian features twisted into what might have been a smile. "Valdry textile patterns. Very distinctive. Where is she?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Marcus lied. "Those could belong to anyone." "Don't insult my intelligence, human," Voss hissed. "Valdry females are valuable commodities, and this one is clearly unregistered. Produce the proper documentation, or she will be confiscated as contraband." Marcus felt his temper rising. "She's not contraband. She's a free person." "Free?" Voss laughed, and the sound was like grinding metal. "Primitive species don't have freedom in hegemony space. They have owners or they have buyers. Which are you?" Before Marcus could answer, Lyra emerged from her hiding place. She walked into the main cabin with her head held high despite the obvious fear in her eyes. Her markings had shifted to a strange pattern Marcus had never seen before. "I am Lyra of the House of 7 Moons," she announced in a formal tone. "I claim protection under the ancient laws of sanctuary." Voss studied her with obvious hunger. She was even more beautiful than Marcus had realized, and he could see the inspector calculating her potential value on the slave markets. "Sanctuary laws don't apply to unregistered aliens," Voss said. "You're coming with us." "Like hell she is," Marcus stepped between them. "This is my ship, and she's under my protection." "Your protection means nothing, human," Voss snarled. "You have no authority here." One of the guards moved to grab Lyra, but Marcus shoved him backward. The guard was bigger and stronger, but Marcus had spent years in military combat training. He used the alien's momentum against him and sent him crashing into the wall. "Bad mistake, human." Voss drew his weapon, but Marcus was already moving. He grabbed a heavy wrench from his toolkit and swung it at the inspector's head. Voss ducked, but the blow caught him on the shoulder, and he howled in pain. The second guard raised his rifle, but Lyra suddenly screamed. The sound was unlike anything Marcus had ever heard, and it seemed to resonate through his bones. The guard stumbled backward, clutching his head, and his weapon clattered to the floor. "Psychic scream," Voss gasped. "She's a trained combat female." Marcus grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward the ship's controls. "Hold on," he shouted as he activated the emergency disconnect sequence. The docking tube separated with explosive force and sent the hegemony inspection team tumbling back toward their own ship. Marcus fired up the engines and pushed them to maximum acceleration. The cargo ship wasn't built for speed, but it was small enough to be maneuverable. The hegemony vessels gave chase, but Marcus knew these shipping lanes better than they did. He dove toward a nearby asteroid field where the larger pursuit ships couldn't follow. The asteroid were dangerous, but Marcus had navigated similar hazards during his military service. He threaded the needle between massive floating rocks, while laser fire from the hegemony ships lit up the space around them. "They're falling behind," Lyra observed as she watched the scanner display. "For now," Marcus replied grimly, "but they'll report this incident and put out a warrant for both of us. We're officially fugitives from hegemony law." Lyra's markings shifted to that dark red danger color again. "I have brought shame upon you, Marcus Reed. Blake chose poorly when he selected you as my protector." Marcus looked at her in surprise. "Are you kidding me? Blake chose perfectly. Any human worth a damn would have done the same thing. Nobody has a right to treat you like property. But now you are a wanted criminal because of me," Lyra said sadly. "Then I guess we'll be wanted criminals together," Marcus replied. "Because I'm not abandoning you to those bastards." For the first time since he had met her, Lyra smiled. It transformed her entire face and made her markings glow with warm golden light. "Perhaps I'm beginning to understand this concept you call love." Marcus kept his ship hidden in the asteroid field for 3 days while hegemony patrol vessels searched the surrounding space. The cargo hold was cramped and the air recycling system worked overtime to keep them breathing, but it was better than being captured. Lyra spent most of the time studying human culture files from Marcus's computer while he monitored communications traffic for any sign that the search was moving elsewhere. "The hegemony has issued a bounty notice," Marcus said as he reviewed the latest security bulletins. 50,000 credits for your return and another 20,000 for my capture." Lyra looked up from the cultural database with concern in her purple eyes. "That's enough money to buy a small starship. Many bounty hunters will come looking for us." "Yeah, well, they'll have to find us first," Marcus replied, but he knew she was right. 70,000 credits was serious money, and it would attract every treasure hunter and criminal in the sector. They couldn't hide in the asteroids forever. The proximity alarm chimed softly, indicating an approaching vessel. Marcus checked the scanner and saw a sleek black ship moving through the asteroid field with surprising skill. The design was unfamiliar, but it moved like a predator hunting for prey. "That's not a hegemony patrol ship," Marcus observed. "Registration shows it belongs to someone called Koros." Lyra's markings immediately shifted to that dark red danger color, and she grabbed Marcus's arm. "Koros is a bounty hunter who specializes in tracking Vaudry females. He's been hunting me for 3 years, ever since I was first captured by slavers." "How does he keep finding you?" Marcus asked as he started warming up the ship's engines. "Vaudry's psychic abilities leave traces that certain technology can detect," Lyra explained. "Koros has scanners specifically designed to track our mental signatures. He's found me twice before, but Blake always managed to get us away." The black ship moved closer, and Marcus could see weapon ports opening along its hull. This wasn't going to be a polite conversation about surrender. Koros planned to disable their ship and take them by force. "Incoming transmission," Marcus announced as he accepted the communication request. The alien who appeared on screen was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Koros had gray metallic skin that looked artificial and glowing red eyes that seemed to burn with their own inner fire. Half his face was covered with cybernetic implants, and mechanical parts replaced his left arm. When he spoke, his voice sounded like grinding machinery. "Human, you are harboring stolen property," Koros said without any greeting. "Surrender the Vaudry female, and I will allow you to live." "She's not property," Marcus replied angrily. "She's a free person under my protection." Koros laughed, and the sound made Marcus's skin crawl. "Your protection means nothing. I have been hunting this particular female for years, and no one will prevent me from collecting my prize." "Blake Torres prevented you," Marcus pointed out. Twice, according to her. The bounty hunter's mechanical features twisted with rage. "Blake Torres is dead, and the protection died with him. You are not Blake Torres human. You are weak and inexperienced, and you will not escape as he did." The transmission cut off, and Koros immediately opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space toward Marcus's cargo ship, but he was already moving. The ship wasn't built for combat, but Marcus had learned a few tricks during his military service. He dove deeper into the asteroid field where the larger rocks would provide cover from Koros's superior firepower. The bounty hunter followed, relentlessly firing precisely aimed shots that barely missed their target. Marcus realized this wasn't random shooting. Koros was trying to disable their engines without destroying the ship. "He wants to take us alive," Marcus said as another energy beam passed close enough to shake their hull. "That gives us an advantage." "How is being hunted by a professional killer an advantage?" Lyra asked while gripping her seat during a particularly violent maneuver. "Because I don't have to worry about keeping him alive," Marcus replied grimly. He pulled his ship into a sharp turn around a massive asteroid and found himself facing Koros head-on. The bounty hunter's ship was faster and better armed, but Marcus had one thing Koros didn't expect: human unpredictability. Instead of trying to run or hide, Marcus accelerated directly toward the black ship. Koros hesitated for a split second, probably wondering if the human had lost his mind. That hesitation was enough for Marcus to slip past the larger ship's weapons and get in close where Koros couldn't fire without risking damage to his own vessel. Marcus opened up with his cargo ship's mining lasers. They weren't designed for combat, but they could cut through asteroid rock, which meant they could damage starship hulls. The beam sliced across Koros' shields and overloaded several power conduits. The bounty hunter's ship spun away, trailing sparks and debris, but Marcus knew the fight was far from over. Koros was an experienced hunter, and he wouldn't be defeated so easily. Sure enough, the black ship came around for another attack run, with all weapons blazing. This time, Marcus couldn't avoid the incoming fire. Energy beams struck his ship's rear section and destroyed one of the engine units. The cargo hauler shuddered and began losing power as warning lights flashed across the control panel. "We're losing main propulsion," Marcus reported as he struggled to keep the ship under control. "I can't outrun him with only one engine." Lyra suddenly stood up and moved toward the ship's communication system. "There's another way, but you must trust me completely." "What are you planning?" Marcus asked. "Something that Blake never allowed me to do," Lyra replied as she activated the transmitter. "I'm going to contact my people." She began speaking in the Vaudry language, and her voice took on strange harmonics that seemed to resonate through the ship's hull. The markings on her skin flared brighter than Marcus had ever seen them, and he could feel some kind of psychic energy building in the air around her. "What did you just do?" Marcus demanded. "I sent a distress call to my homeworld," Lyra explained. "If any Vaudry ships are within range, they are honor-bound to respond." "Your homeworld is weeks away from here," Marcus protested. "How can that help us now?" Before Lyra could answer, 3 new ships appeared on the scanner. They were sleek and organic-looking, as if they had been grown rather than built. Marcus had never seen Vaudry vessels before, but he recognized the distinctive energy signatures from his military database. "Vaudry warships," he said in amazement. "How did they get here so fast?" "My people have been tracking Koros for months," Lyra revealed. "He has captured several Vaudry females and sold them to off-world buyers. The High Council decided he must be stopped." The Vaudry ships moved with deadly grace as they surrounded Koros' vessel. They were smaller than the bounty hunter's ship, but there were 3 of them, and they moved like a coordinated pack of predators. Marcus watched in fascination as they demonstrated combat techniques he had only heard about in military briefings. Koros tried to run, but the Vaudry ships were faster and more maneuverable. They herded him like wolves driving prey while staying just out of range of his heaviest weapons. When he tried to turn and fight, they scattered and attacked from different angles, making it impossible for him to target all of them at once. "Surrender, Koros," came a new voice over the communication channel. "You have committed crimes against the Vaudry people, and you will face justice." "I follow hegemony law," Koros snarled back. "These females are legal salvage." "Not anymore," the Vaudry commander replied coldly. The 3 ships attacked simultaneously, and Koros' vessel disappeared in a brilliant explosion. Marcus shielded his eyes from the flash, and when he looked again, there was nothing left but glowing debris scattered among the asteroids. One of the Vaudry ships approached and requested permission to dock. Marcus agreed and soon found his cargo hold filled with tall, graceful aliens who looked similar to Lyra, but with different marking patterns and darker skin tones. Their leader was a female who carried herself with obvious authority. "I am Commander Nara of the Vaudry Defense Fleet," she announced. "You must be Marcus Reed the Human, who is bonded with Lyra of the House of 7 Moons." Marcus felt confused by her formal tone. "I'm not bonded with anyone." I'm just trying to keep her safe. Commander Nara exchanged glances with her soldiers, and Marcus noticed their markings shifting to what looked like surprise or concern. You claim no bond with this female. That's right, Marcus confirmed. Blake Torres was her bondmate, not me. I'm just helping her until we can figure out a permanent solution. There's no permanent solution, Nara said firmly. A Vaudry female cannot exist without a bondmate for protection. If you do not claim her, then she must return to our homeworld for reassignment to another male. Lyra stepped forward and spoke rapidly in the Vaudry language. Marcus couldn't understand the words, but he could hear emotion in her voice. The other Vaudry listened intently, and their markings shifted through several different color patterns. She says you have protected her from hegemony officials and risked your life to keep her safe, Nara translated. These are the actions of a bondmate, even if you do not claim the title. I would have done the same for anyone in her situation, Marcus replied. Humans don't abandon people who need help. Fascinating, Nara murmured. Blake Torres said similar things about human nature, but I didn't fully believe him. You truly would risk everything for a stranger. It's what decent people do, Marcus said simply. Nara studied him for several long moments, as if trying to solve a complex puzzle. There's something you should know about Lyra's situation. She is not just any Vaudry female. She is the daughter of High Matriarch Vera, of the House of Seven Moons. Her family sold her to prevent a political marriage that would have started a civil war between two powerful houses. Marcus felt his heart sink. So she really can't go home. Not unless she completes the sacred trials with a bondmate who can prove his worthiness, Nara explained. The trials are dangerous, and many candidates die in the attempt. Only the strongest and most determined males even try. What happens if she doesn't complete the trials? Marcus asked. Her family will execute her for bringing dishonor to their house. Nara replied matter-of-factly. It is the only way to restore their reputation. Marcus looked at Lyra and saw resignation in her purple eyes. She had known this all along, but hadn't told him the full truth. Her family wouldn't just reject her, they would kill her. These sacred trials, Marcus said slowly. Could a human attempt them? Commander Nara's markings shifted to what Marcus was learning to recognize as shock. No off-worlder has ever attempted the sacred trials. The tests are designed for Vaudry males and require specific physical and mental capabilities. But it's theoretically possible, Marcus pressed. Theoretically, yes, Nara admitted reluctantly. But it would be suicide for someone not born on our world. The trials test combat skills, survival instincts, and psychic compatibility. Humans possess none of these abilities. Marcus felt that familiar stubborn determination rising in his chest. It was the same feeling he had experienced when the hegemony tried to take Lyra. No one had the right to execute her just because she didn't fit into their social expectations. I want to try, he announced. Marcus, no, Lyra said quickly. I won't let you die for me. And I won't let you die because I was too afraid to try, Marcus replied. Blake trusted me to protect you, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. The journey to Valdros Prime took 5 days aboard Commander Nara's warship. Marcus spent most of the time learning about Vaudry culture and the sacred trials, while Lyra tried to convince him to change his mind. The other Vaudry warriors watched him with obvious curiosity, as if he was some exotic animal they had never seen before. The first trial is called Hunt of Proving, Nara explained as they reviewed holographic displays of the deadly tests. Candidates must survive alone in the wilderness for 7 days while being stalked by a shadow beast. These creatures are apex predators that can smell fear and track prey across vast distances. The hologram showed a massive reptilian creature with 6 legs, razor-sharp claws, and teeth like curved daggers. It stood nearly 3 meters tall and moved with terrifying speed despite its size. Marcus had faced dangerous animals during his military service, but nothing like this monster. Most candidates try to hunt the shadow beast directly, Nara continued. They believe killing it proves their strength and worthiness. However, the creatures are nearly impossible to defeat in direct combat, even for our strongest warriors. How do the successful candidates survive? Marcus asked. By being clever rather than strong, Nara replied. The shadow beast is intelligent, but it follows predictable hunting patterns. A smart candidate can use these patterns against it. The second trial was called the Mind Maze, and it involved navigating a complex psychic construct while under mental assault from Valdry telepaths. Candidates had to solve puzzles and overcome obstacles while their minds were bombarded with confusing images and false memories. This trial tests mental fortitude and resistance to psychic manipulation, Nara explained. Many candidates go insane and never recover their sanity. The third and final trial was the soul bonding with a candidate, and the Valdry female joined their minds completely. If they were truly compatible, the bond would strengthen both of them. If not, both would die from the psychic feedback. No off-world has ever survived the soul bonding, Nara warned. Valdry minds are structured differently than other species. The psychic connection usually destroys alien consciousness. Marcus studied the information carefully while trying to ignore Lyra's worried glances. She had been unusually quiet during the journey, and her markings remained that dark red, danger color most of the time. He knew she was afraid he would die attempting something that was probably impossible. There has to be a way, Marcus muttered as he reviewed the trial records for the 100th time. Blake wouldn't have set this up if he didn't think I could succeed. Blake Torres never intended for you to attempt the sacred trials, Nara pointed out. He probably expected you to find some other solution to Lyra's situation. Well, there isn't another solution, Marcus replied stubbornly. So I'm going to make this work, somehow. When they arrived at Valdros Prime, Marcus understood why the Valdry had evolved such a rigid social structure. The planet was a nightmare world of deadly predators, extreme weather, and hostile terrain. Purple jungles stretched the horizon, filled with plants that moved like animals and animals that looked like plants. The air was thick with humidity and strange pollen that made Marcus's eyes water. The Valdry capital city was built into the side of a massive cliff face, with buildings carved directly from the living rock. Bridges and walkways connected different levels, while waterfalls cascaded down the cliff walls, providing both beauty and defense against flying predators. It was impressive, but also alien in ways that reminded Marcus he was very far from home. High Matriarch Vera of the House of Seven Moons received them in a great hall carved from black stone and decorated with the bones of ancient beasts. She was tall and regal with silver hair like Lyra's, but her markings were more complex and seemed to shift with calculated precision. Her purple eyes held the kind of cold intelligence that came from decades of political maneuvering. "So you are the human who claims protection over my daughter," Vera said as she studied Marcus from her throne. "You are smaller than I expected." "Size isn't everything," Marcus replied, trying to keep his voice respectful. Blake Torres wasn't particularly large either, but he managed to protect Lyra for 3 years. "Blake Torres was a skilled warrior who understood our ways," Vera responded coolly. "You are an unknown quantity with no proven abilities. Why should I risk my daughter's life on your untested strength?" "Because the alternative is executing her," Marcus said bluntly. "At least this way she has a chance." Vera's markings shifted to what Marcus was learning to recognize as anger or displeasure. "You dare lecture me about my own daughter's fate." "I'm not lecturing anyone," Marcus replied. "I'm offering to risk my life to save hers. If that's not good enough, then maybe your culture needs to reconsider its priorities." The hall fell silent, and Marcus could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. Several Valdry warriors moved their hands to their weapons while others stared at him in shock. Apparently no one spoke to the High Matriarch that way and lived to tell about it. Vera stood up slowly and Marcus prepared for the worst. Instead she began to laugh, and the sound echoed through the stone chamber. "You have the same arrogant courage that made Blake Torres so insufferable," she said with what might have been approval. "Very well, human. You may attempt the sacred trials, but understand that failure means death for both you and my daughter." The first trial began at dawn the next day when Marcus was dropped alone in the wilderness with nothing but basic survival gear and a warning that the shadow beast was already hunting him. The jungle was even more hostile up close with plants that try to grab him and insects that buzz around his head in aggressive swarms. Marcus had learned during his military training that panic was the enemy of survival. He forced himself to remain calm and think logically about his situation. The shadow beast was bigger and stronger than him, but it was also a wild animal that followed instinctive patterns. Every predator had weaknesses, and Marcus just had to find them. He spent the first day studying tracks and signs of the creature's presence. The shadow beast was indeed following him, but it seemed to be observing rather than attacking. Marcus realized it was probably waiting for him to make a mistake or show weakness before striking. On the second night, Marcus heard the creature moving through the jungle nearby. Its footsteps were surprisingly quiet for something so large, but occasionally a branch would snap or a rock would be displaced. Marcus lay perfectly still in his hidden camp and listened to the sounds of death circling him in the darkness. The shadow beast attacked on the third day when Marcus was crossing a small stream. It burst from the undergrowth with incredible speed and would have killed him instantly if he hadn't been expecting it. Marcus rolled sideways, and the creature's claws missed him by centimeters. Instead of trying to fight the monster, directly Marcus ran toward a section of jungle where he had spent hours preparing a trap. The shadow beast followed confidently, assuming its prey was fleeing in panic. Marcus led it through a narrow passage between two large trees where he had rigged a deadfall using heavy rocks and salvage cable. The trap worked perfectly, and several tons of stone crashed down on the shadow beast. However, the creature was tougher than Marcus had expected, and it crawled out of the rubble with only minor injuries. Now it was angry as well as hungry. Marcus had prepared for this possibility and activated his backup plan. He had spent 2 days building a series of pit traps connected by hidden tripwires. The enraged shadow beast charged after him and fell into the first pit, where sharpened stakes wounded its legs. When it climbed out, it triggered another trap that dropped a net over its head. For the next 4 days, Marcus led the injured and increasingly frustrated predator through an obstacle course of his own design. He used the jungle terrain against it, creating rock slides blocking passages, and starting small fires to confuse its sense of smell. The shadow beast was powerful, but Marcus was smarter and more adaptable. On the 7th day, the exhausted creature finally gave up the hunt and retreated deeper into the jungle. Marcus had survived not by defeating the shadow beast in combat, but by proving he was too much trouble to be worth eating. It was a very human solution to an alien problem. The second trial took place in a specially prepared chamber where Marcus was connected to psychic amplifiers and subjected to mental attacks from trained Vaudry telepaths. The mind maze felt like being trapped inside a nightmare where nothing was real and everything was designed to drive him insane. Marcus found himself reliving traumatic memories from his military service, mixed with false visions of failure and death. The telepaths tried to convince him that Lyra was already dead, that the trials were pointless, that he should give up and accept defeat. The mental assault was unlike anything he had ever experienced. However, Marcus had one advantage the Vaudry didn't expect. Human minds were naturally chaotic and unpredictable compared to the ordered thoughts of telepathic species. The mental attacks that would have shattered a Vaudry consciousness simply bounced off Marcus's stubborn human determination. He navigated the mind maze by ignoring the illusions and focusing on concrete facts. Lyra was alive and waiting for him. The trials were real, and he was going to complete them. Everything else was just noise designed to distract him from his goal. When Marcus emerged from the psychic chamber after 6 hours of mental torture, the Vaudry observers stared at him in amazement. Most candidates either solved the maze quickly or went insane within the first hour. No one had ever simply powered through it by sheer force of will. Impossible, whispered one of the telepaths. His mind should have shattered under that level of assault. Human minds are apparently more resilient than we assumed, Commander Nara observed, or perhaps more stubborn. The final trial would take place the next day, and Marcus knew it would be the most dangerous. The soul bonding required him to merge his consciousness completely with Lyra's, and if their minds weren't compatible, both of them would die. It was the ultimate test of their relationship, and Marcus wasn't sure they would survive it. That night, Lyra visited him in his quarters, and for the first time since he had known her, she looked truly afraid. Her markings flickered between different colors, as if she couldn't decide what emotion to display. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "I can accept death with honor rather than risk your life." "Too late for that now," Marcus replied. "I've come this far and I'm not backing down. Besides, I think we're more compatible than anyone realizes." "What if we're not?" Lyra asked. "What if my mind destroys yours during the bonding?" Marcus took her hands and looked into her purple eyes. "Then at least we'll die together. That's better than living apart, knowing I could have tried to save you." For the first time, Lyra seemed to truly understand what he meant by love. Her markings brightened to that warm golden color, and she smiled despite her fear. Tomorrow we will either bond for life or die together. Either way, we'll face it as partners, Marcus promised. The soul bonding ceremony took place in the most sacred chamber of the Vaudry capital deep within the mountain, where ancient crystals amplified psychic energy. Marcus and Lyra sat facing each other in the center of a complex pattern carved into the stone floor, while dozens of witnesses filled the surrounding galleries. High Matriarch Vera watched from her ceremonial throne with an expression that revealed nothing about her thoughts. "Are you ready?" asked the trial master, an elderly Vaudry male, whose markings had faded to pale silver with age. His voice echoed in the crystalline chamber as he prepared the psychic amplifiers that would join their minds. Marcus looked into Lyra's purple eyes and saw his own determination reflected there. They had come too far to hesitate now. "We're ready?" The trial master activated the ancient machinery, and immediately Marcus felt something foreign touching the edges of his consciousness. It started as a whisper, then grew stronger as Lyra's mind reached out to his. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced, and for a moment he panicked as alien thoughts began mixing with his own. Lyra's memories flooded through him, and Marcus experienced her childhood on the dangerous world of Valdros Prime. He felt her fear when massive predators stalked her family's compound, and her sadness when her parents sold her to prevent a war. The pain of slavery and the confusion of meeting Blake Torres washed over him like a tide of emotion. Then Lyra began experiencing his memories, and Marcus felt her shock as she witnessed human concepts she had never understood. She saw his military service and the bonds of loyalty between soldiers who would die for each other. She experienced his friendship with Blake Torres and understood for the first time what humans meant by love. The psychic connection deepened, and Marcus felt his individual identity beginning to blur with Lyra's. This was the dangerous part where many candidates lost themselves and died. He could feel the pressure building in his mind as two completely different types of consciousness tried to merge. "Fight it," whispered the trial master urgently. "Don't let your minds dissolve into each other. You must remain yourselves while becoming 1 inch." Marcus struggled to maintain his sense of self, while allowing Lyra deeper into his thoughts. It was like trying to hold water in his hands while someone poured more on top. The psychic pressure increased until he thought his skull might crack from the strain. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of his mind being destroyed by the alien contact, Marcus found that his chaotic human thoughts actually stabilized Lyra's more ordered Vaudry consciousness. Where her mind was rigid and structured, it provided flexibility and creativity. Where his thoughts were scattered and undisciplined, hers provided focus and clarity. They weren't destroying each other. They were completing each other. The realization came to both of them simultaneously, and suddenly the painful pressure transformed into something beautiful. Their minds merged not as conqueror and victim, but as equal partners creating something greater than either could achieve alone. Marcus could feel Lyra's psychic abilities flowing through him, while she experienced his emotional depth and capacity for unconditional loyalty. The bond that formed between them was stronger than anything the trial master had ever witnessed, and the crystal chamber resonated with harmonious energy. "Impossible!" gasped High Matriarch Vera as she rose from her throne. "The bonding is supposed to be temporary during the trial. What I'm seeing suggests a permanent soul merge." The trial master checked his instruments with obvious excitement. "The psychic readings are off the scale. They're not just bonded, they're genuinely becoming one consciousness with two bodies." Marcus opened his eyes and looked at Lyra, but now he could also feel her emotions as if they were his own. Her joy at their success mixed with his relief at surviving the trial, and together they experienced something neither species had ever known. They were still themselves, but they were also something new. "The trials are complete," announced the trial master. "Marcus Reed of Earth has proven his worthiness, and the bonding with Lyra of the House of Seven Moons is recognized as valid." The assembled Vaudry erupted in celebration, but their joy was cut short by urgent alarms echoing through the mountain. Commander Nara burst into the chamber with her weapon drawn, and her markings flashing the urgent patterns of imminent danger. "Hegemony battle fleet approaching," she reported quickly. 50 ships, including 3 heavy cruisers. They're demanding the immediate surrender of the human Marcus Reed and the Vaudry female Lyra. High Matriarch Vera's expression hardened into cold fury. They dare threaten us in our own system. They claim authority under hegemony law, Nara continued. Their commander says a human is a fugitive from justice, and the female is stolen property that must be returned. Marcus felt his anger rising, and through their new bond, he could sense Lyra's rage as well. After everything they had been through, the hegemony still wanted to treat her like a piece of cargo to be bought and sold. How long before they reached the planet? Marcus asked. 6 hours at their current speed, Nara replied. Our defense fleet can fight them, but we're outnumbered 3-1. Marcus stood up and helped Lyra to her feet. Through their mental connection, he could feel her thoughts aligning with his own. They had found something special together, and neither of them was willing to let the hegemony destroy it. There might be another way, Marcus said as an idea began forming in his mind. What do you know about human military tactics? Very little, admitted Commander Nara. Humans are new to galactic politics, and most species consider your military capabilities primitive. Marcus smiled grimly. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Can you get me a communication link to Earth? Within an hour, Marcus was speaking directly with Admiral Chin of the Earth Defense Force. The conversation was brief, and Marcus didn't explain all the details, but he made it clear that humanity's reputation in galactic affairs was at stake. The Admiral listened carefully, then made a decision that would change everything. EGF Task Force 7 is already in the area conducting training exercises. Admiral Chin reported, they can reach your position in 4 hours. Try to hold out until then. The hegemony fleet arrived exactly on schedule and immediately began broadcasting demands for surrender. Their commander was the same reptilian Inspector Voss who had tried to capture Lyra weeks earlier. He appeared on screen with obvious satisfaction as he surveyed the Vaudry defenses. You are outnumbered and outgunned, Voss announced. Surrender the fugitives, and we will spare your pathetic world. High Matriarch Vera responded with the diplomatic equivalent of a declaration of war. The House of Seven Moons does not bow to thieves and slavers. If you want our people, you will have to take them by force. The battle began immediately as hegemony ships opened fire on the Vaudry orbital defenses. The defending fleet fought bravely, but they were clearly outmatched by superior numbers and firepower. Several Vaudry ships were destroyed in the first exchange, while barely scratching the enemy's shields. Marcus watched the battle from the planet's surface while monitoring communication channels for any sign of the promised human reinforcements. Through his bond with Lyra, he could feel her distress at seeing her people die for their sake. They're losing, Lyra said quietly as another Vaudry ship exploded on the tactical display. My people are brave warriors, but the hegemony has too many ships. Not for much longer, Marcus replied as new contacts appeared on the scanner. 12 human warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system and immediately began accelerating toward the battle. They were smaller than hegemony vessels, but they moved with coordinated precision that spoke of superior training and tactics. This is Admiral Sarah Kim of the Earth Defense Force. Came a new voice over the communication channels. Hegemony vessels, you are hereby ordered to withdraw from Vaudry space immediately. Inspector Voss laughed at the ultimatum. 12 primitive human ships against 50 hegemony warships. Your species has developed a death wish. We'll see about that, Admiral Kim replied calmly. What happened next became legendary in galactic military history. The human ships didn't engage in the traditional formation fighting that most species preferred. Instead, they scattered and began using tactics that the hegemony had never encountered. Human vessels appeared and disappeared using advanced stealth technology while launching coordinated attacks from unexpected angles. They targeted specific subsystems rather than trying to destroy ships outright, focusing on weapons power and communications. Within minutes, the hegemony formation was in chaos as ships lost contact with each other and found their weapons offline. The humans had studied every major galactic military for decades, and they knew exactly how to exploit the weaknesses in hegemony doctrine. While the alien commanders tried to maintain formal battle lines, the human ships fought like a pack of wolves, picking off isolated targets and disappearing before retaliation could be organized. Impossible, Voss snarled as his flagship shields failed under concentrated human fire. How are they doing this? Because we don't fight fair, Admiral Kim responded. We fight to win. The Vaudry fleet regrouped and joined the attack now that the odds were more even. The combination of Vaudry warrior courage and human tactical innovation proved devastating. The hegemony ships found themselves caught between two completely different fighting styles that they couldn't counter effectively. Inspector Voss's flagship was the last of all its shields, finally collapsing under sustained fire from both human and Vaudry vessels. As escape pods launched from the dying ship, Marcus felt a sense of satisfaction that justice had finally been served. The victory celebration lasted for 3 days and established humanity as a major power in galactic politics overnight. The hegemony's reputation for invincibility was shattered, and other species began re-evaluating their assumptions about human capabilities. Marcus and Lyra were married in a ceremony that combined human and Vaudry traditions, creating the first official alliance between the two species. Their bond became a symbol of cooperation and mutual respect that inspired similar partnerships throughout the galaxy. 5 years later, Marcus stood in the garden of their home on New Terra, watching their twin children play among the flowers. The boy had his father's brown hair and stubborn determination, while the girl inherited her mother's silver hair and psychic abilities. They represented the future of both species, and the proof that love could bridge any divide. Lyra approached carrying their newest addition, a baby who seemed to glow with inner light. Through their permanent bond, Marcus could feel her contentment and love mixing with his own emotions. "Blake would be proud," she said softly as she watched their children playing. "Yeah, he would," Marcus agreed. "He always said the best things in life were worth fighting for." Marcus reflected on how much had changed since that day he received Blake's final message. His friend's gift hadn't just been Lyra, it had been the opportunity for humanity to prove that their greatest strength wasn't technology or weapons, but their ability to form genuine connections with others and fight for what they believed was right. The galaxy was a better place because humans had learned to love across species boundaries and weren't afraid to defend that love against anyone who tried to destroy it.